You believe your biggest enemy is confusion. It isn't. Your biggest enemy is the voice inside your own mind that sounds exactly like you. Every bad decision you've ever made didn't begin with a lack of intelligence. It began the moment you believed every thought that entered your head. That is why people smarter than you fail. That is why talented people destroy themselves. That is why emotionally weak people remain trapped for decades without realizing they built the prison themselves. Right now, your mind is crowded. Not with truth, with noise. The terrifying part is that you no longer know the difference. You wake up carrying conversations that haven't happened yet. You replay insults from years ago. You imagine disasters that never arrive. You fight invisible battles while reality quietly slips through your fingers. And you call that thinking. It isn't thinking. It's mental slavery disguised as intelligence. The people who control their lives are rarely the people who think the most. They are the people who think the clearest. That difference changes everything. If you're one of the few people willing to confront uncomfortable truths instead of hiding behind comforting lies, subscribe and become part of this community. Most people spend their lives escaping themselves. Here, we learn how to master ourselves instead. Because what you're about to discover isn't another productivity trick or motivational speech. It's a psychological weapon, one that ancient Stoics understood long before modern psychology gave it a name. And once you truly see it, you'll never trust your own mind the same way again. Most people believe thinking is automatic. Marcus Aurelius understood something different. Your first thought belongs to habit. Your second thought belongs to character. That means your first reaction is not necessarily who you are. It is merely the conditioning you've accumulated through years of fear, approval-seeking, emotional wounds, comparison, and unconscious repetition. Yet almost nobody questions it. Someone ignores your message. Your mind instantly creates a story. They don't respect me. Someone criticizes your work. They think I'm a failure. Someone succeeds. I'm falling behind. Notice something? Reality never said those things. Your mind did. And because you accepted those thoughts without questioning them, your emotions obeyed. Then your actions followed. Then your life slowly became the reflection of thoughts that were never true to begin with. This is why mastering clear thinking is not about becoming smarter. It's about refusing to become the victim of your own interpretations. The greatest prison has no walls. It is built from assumptions. You don't suffer because life is difficult. You suffer because your mind constantly translates neutral events into personal attacks. Epictetus understood this centuries ago without laboratories or brain scans. Events themselves are rarely what destroy you. Your judgment about those events does. Read that again in your own life. Someone leaves. You call yourself unlovable. You fail once. You call yourself incapable. You make one mistake. You declare yourself worthless. Notice how quickly your identity becomes chained to temporary experiences. That isn't wisdom. That is emotional laziness. Because creating a negative story requires almost no effort. Questioning it requires courage. And courage is becoming increasingly rare. Modern society trains people to react immediately, reply instantly, judge instantly, become offended instantly, celebrate instantly, condemn instantly. Very few people pause. That pause, that tiny moment between stimulus and response, that is where power lives. Most people never enter that space. They sprint straight from emotion into action, then spend years repairing damage they created in seconds. Have you ever sent a message you later regretted? Lost a relationship because of pride? Ruined an opportunity because fear spoke louder than logic? Those moments weren't accidents. They were evidence that someone else was driving your mind. Not another person. Your unconscious patterns. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You are not thinking nearly as much as you believe. You are remembering, repeating, predicting, defending, justifying. Very little of what happens inside your head deserves to be called thinking. Real thinking is slow, silent, precise. It demands that you question even your strongest beliefs. Most people avoid that because certainty feels safer than truth. but certainty has destroyed more lives than ignorance ever could. Think about every argument you've witnessed. Each person believed they were right. Both couldn't be, yet neither questioned themselves. Why? Because the ego would rather protect its identity than discover reality. And that same battle is happening inside your own mind every day. Your ego doesn't want clarity. It wants comfort. It wants to be right. It wants familiar pain instead of unfamiliar growth. That's why you repeat habits that make you miserable. Your identity has mistaken suffering for safety. The Stoics practiced something most people secretly fear. They doubted themselves before doubting reality. Not because they lacked confidence, because they respected truth more than pride. Imagine how different your life would become if every emotional reaction had to pass through one question first. What if I'm wrong? That single question has ended wars inside people's minds. It has saved friendships. It has preserved marriages. It has prevented financial ruin. It has stopped revenge before it became regret. But almost nobody asks it, because admitting you might be wrong feels like weakness. Ironically, it is the beginning of strength. Here is the first great shift that separates powerful minds from ordinary ones. Clear thinkers don't trust confidence. They trust evidence. Confidence without evidence creates arrogance. Evidence without ego creates wisdom. And wisdom always wins over time. Look around. The loudest people are often the least certain. The most aggressive opinions usually hide the deepest insecurities. The people desperate to convince everyone else are often trying to convince themselves. Strength rarely announces itself. It simply exists. Silence unsettles insecure people because silence cannot be manipulated. The moment you stop explaining yourself to everyone, something strange happens. People begin explaining themselves to you. The moment you stop chasing approval, approval starts chasing you. Not because you became more attractive, because independence is magnetic. People are drawn toward those who clearly don't depend on them emotionally. This is where most people make a devastating mistake. They believe clear thinking means removing emotion. No, it means refusing to let emotion become your commander. Emotions are visitors, not rulers. Anger has information. Fear has information. Jealousy has information. But none of them deserve the throne. Imagine placing a frightened child in charge of a kingdom. That is exactly what happens every time fear makes your decisions. Imagine placing your wounded past in charge of your future. That is what happens every time insecurity chooses your actions. Yet millions of people do exactly that every single day. Then they wonder why life feels chaotic. Chaos outside almost always begins with chaos inside. And here's what nobody tells you. The mind doesn't become clearer by adding more information. It becomes clearer by removing what never belonged there in the first place. But what if the greatest source of mental confusion isn't your past? What if it's something you're still doing today? Something so ordinary that nearly everyone mistakes it for intelligence. And once you recognize it, you'll realize why most people unknowingly surrender control of their minds every single morning. Every morning, before your feet touch the ground, a battle begins. Not in your workplace, not in your relationships, not in the outside world. Inside your mind. Before reality has even presented you with a single problem, your brain has already manufactured dozens. You replay conversations that haven't happened. You predict rejection before anyone has spoken. You assume failure before you've taken the first step. Then you wonder why exhaustion follows you everywhere. This is not clear thinking. It is unconscious rehearsal for a life you don't want. The Stoics understood something modern people have forgotten. The quality of your life is determined less by what happens to you than by the condition of the mind that meets it. Marcus Aurelius trained himself every morning to prepare his perception before facing the world. He knew that if perception remained disciplined, circumstances lost much of their power. Most people prepare their schedule. Very few prepare their mind. That is why they spend the day reacting instead of directing. The greatest deception your mind performs is convincing you that every thought deserves your attention. It doesn't. Thoughts are not commands. They are invitations. You choose which ones enter. Imagine living in a house where every stranger who knocked on the door was immediately invited inside. Before long, your home would no longer belong to you. It would belong to whoever entered last. That is exactly how most people treat their minds. A criticism enters. It stays. An insult enters. It stays. A fear enters. It stays. An old embarrassment enters. It stays. Eventually, your own voice becomes impossible to hear because your inner world is crowded with borrowed opinions. This is why so many people no longer know who they really are. They have confused other people's judgments with their own identity. Seneca warned that the person who follows the crowd will never discover himself. Every opinion you absorb without questioning becomes another chain around your freedom. The tragedy is that most chains are invisible. You cannot fight what you refuse to see. Look closely at your own life. How many goals belong to you? How many fears belong to you? How many standards belong to you? And how many were quietly handed to you by parents, friends, social media, society, or strangers whose names you'll never remember? The uncomfortable truth is that much of your suffering isn't original. It's inherited. Someone taught you that your worth depended on achievement. Someone convinced you that failure made you unlovable. Someone rewarded your obedience more than your authenticity. Little by little, you stopped asking what was true and started asking what would be accepted. Approval became survival, and survival became your identity. This is where dark psychology reveals something disturbing. The easiest person to manipulate is not the weakest. It is the person desperate to be liked. When someone discovers that your happiness depends on their approval, they don't need to control your body. They only need to control your emotions. A delayed reply becomes punishment. A compliment becomes a reward. Attention becomes currency. Silence becomes leverage. Without realizing it, you've handed someone else the keys to your emotional state. Epictetus would call this the greatest form of slavery. Not because someone imprisoned your body, because you surrendered your mind. Freedom begins the moment you realize that no human being should possess the power to determine your peace. That realization is terrifying, because it forces you to accept responsibility. You can no longer blame them. You must confront yourself. Most people never reach this point because blaming others is easier than rebuilding yourself. Victims collect sympathy. Builders collect strength. One comforts the ego. The other transforms the soul. Here is another mindset shift that changes everything. Your mind doesn't become stronger by winning every battle. It becomes stronger by choosing which battles deserve your attention. Most arguments are invitations to waste your life. Every insult demands a reaction. Every controversy begs for your energy. Every distraction promises importance. But not everything deserves access to your consciousness. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that people act according to what they believe is good, even when they are mistaken. This understanding didn't make him weak. It made him difficult to provoke. Imagine becoming so mentally disciplined that another person's anger no longer infects your peace. Imagine refusing to inherit someone else's chaos. Imagine standing in front of insults with the same calm as a mountain standing against the wind. That is not emotional numbness. That is mastery. The weak believe power means controlling others. The Stoics knew real power meant controlling yourself. And that difference separates rulers from victims. There is another enemy hiding inside your mind. One that wears the mask of intelligence. Overthinking. People mistake overthinking for careful planning. It isn't. Most overthinking is fear pretending to be preparation. You replay every possible outcome because you hope certainty will eliminate risk. But certainty never comes. Instead, your imagination creates hundreds of imaginary futures. You suffer each one as though it were real. Seneca observed that people suffer more in imagination than in reality. Think about how many nights you've lost sleep over events that never happened. How many opportunities died because you waited for perfect certainty. How many dreams were buried beneath endless analysis. Your mind told you it was protecting you. It was protecting your comfort, not your future. Action reveals truth. Rumination only multiplies illusions. The clearest thinkers are not those who know everything before they begin. They are the ones willing to discover reality through disciplined action. This is why courage sharpens the mind. Fear clouds it. Every courageous decision teaches your brain that uncertainty is survivable. Every avoided decision teaches your brain that fear deserves obedience. Each time you retreat, your prison grows larger. Each time you move forward, even while afraid, another wall collapses. This is why voluntary discomfort became a Stoic practice. They intentionally walked toward hardship, not because they enjoyed suffering, because they refused to let comfort become their master. Comfort whispers, "Stay where it's safe." Growth whispers something entirely different. Become someone your current self cannot yet recognize. The distance between those two voices is the distance between an ordinary life and an extraordinary one. Now ask yourself something honestly. When was the last time you challenged your own beliefs instead of defending them? Most people collect evidence for what they already believe. Clear thinkers collect evidence for what they might be missing. That single habit destroys arrogance. It opens the door to wisdom, because truth has nothing to fear from investigation. Only ego does. The ego is a skilled storyteller. It rewrites your failures. It exaggerates your successes, protects your excuses. It disguises your weaknesses as personality traits. I have trust issues. No, perhaps you've become addicted to suspicion. I'm just emotional. Or perhaps you've never learned emotional discipline. This is just who I am. Or perhaps you've mistaken repeated habits for identity. Notice how the ego resists every possibility that demands change. Because if change is possible, then excuses lose their value. That realization terrifies the undisciplined mind. Nietzsche challenged people to become creators of themselves instead of prisoners of inherited identities. The Stoics demanded the same transformation through discipline rather than desire. Both understood a timeless truth. You are not finished. You are being shaped by every thought you repeat. Every repeated thought becomes a belief. Every belief becomes a decision. Every decision becomes a habit. Every habit becomes your character. And character quietly becomes destiny. Most people don't lose their future in one catastrophic moment. They surrender it thought by thought, excuse by excuse, reaction by reaction. That is why mastering clear thinking is not a luxury. It is survival. Because in a world competing for your attention, the greatest victory is keeping ownership of your own mind. And yet, there is one final illusion almost everyone believes. It is so deeply rooted that even highly intelligent people spend their entire lives trapped inside it. It disguises itself as ambition, pretends to be responsibility. It even looks like love. But beneath the surface, it is nothing more than fear wearing a respectable mask. The moment you expose this illusion, you'll understand why so many successful people still feel empty, and why true inner freedom remains so rare. The illusion is this. You believe your life will finally begin when everything is under control. When you earn more. When people respect you. When your family understands you. When your body changes. When your fears disappear. When your future becomes certain. Until then, you keep postponing your peace. You tell yourself, just one more achievement, one more promotion, one more relationship, one more victory, but there is always one more. Your mind keeps moving the finish line. This is one of the oldest psychological traps in human history. You chase a future version of yourself while abandoning the only version that can actually change your life, the one who exists now. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that the present moment is the only place where reason can act. The past cannot be corrected. The future cannot be controlled. But your judgment right now determines both. Most people don't lose because they lack intelligence. They lose because they sacrifice today to imaginary tomorrows. And tomorrow never arrives. It simply changes its name. One day it becomes next week. Then next month. Then next year. Then someday. Eventually, someday becomes never. This is why clear thinking demands ruthless honesty. Ask yourself a question that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. What exactly are you waiting for? Not the excuse. The real answer. Are you waiting to become fearless? Fear will never disappear. The courageous are not fearless. They simply refuse to negotiate with fear. Are you waiting for confidence? Confidence is not the price you pay before action. It is the reward you earn after repeated action. Every person you admire once stood exactly where you are now. Confused, uncertain, doubtful. The difference is that they stopped asking their emotions for permission. They made decisions based on principles instead of feelings. That is one of the greatest lessons Stoicism offers. Your emotions deserve to be acknowledged. They do not deserve to become your commander. Imagine if a ship's captain allowed every wave to choose the direction of the voyage. The ship would never reach its destination. Your emotions are those waves. Your principles must remain the captain. This is where modern psychology agrees with ancient Stoicism. Your brain constantly searches for evidence that confirms what you already believe. If you believe you're incapable, your mind will filter reality until it finds proof. If you believe you're unlucky, every setback becomes confirmation. If you believe people cannot be trusted, your attention will ignore every trustworthy person and magnify every betrayal. Your mind is not a camera. It is a filter, and filters can deceive. That is why mastering clear thinking begins with questioning your own conclusions before questioning the world. The strongest minds do not ask, "How can I prove I'm right?" They ask, "What truth am I refusing to see?" That question destroys illusion. It also destroys ego. And that is precisely why most people never ask it. The ego would rather remain comfortable than become free. Think about the last time someone criticized you. What happened inside your mind? Did you immediately become defensive? Did you search for reasons why they were wrong? Did you mentally attack their character instead of examining your own? That reaction reveals something profound. Most people don't hear criticism. They hear danger. Why? Because they have attached their identity to being correct. The Stoics practiced something radically different. They treated criticism like fire. Fire can burn your house, or it can forge your sword. The difference depends entirely on how you use it. Even unfair criticism contains opportunity, not because your critic is always right, but because your reaction always teaches you something about yourself. If a single opinion destroys your peace, then peace was never yours to begin with. Real confidence is quiet. It doesn't panic when challenged. It investigates. It adapts. It improves. Weak confidence argues. Strong confidence observes. That single shift changes every relationship you'll ever have. Now consider another invisible prison: comparison. Comparison is one of the fastest ways to poison clear thinking. Every time you compare your beginning to someone else's middle, your judgment becomes distorted. You stop seeing reality. You begin measuring your worth against carefully edited illusions. Today, attention has become the world's most valuable currency. Social media understands this better than most governments. Every notification is designed to interrupt your thinking. Every endless scroll competes for your focus. Every carefully curated image whispers the same dangerous message. You are behind. You are missing out. You are not enough. The frightening part isn't that these messages exist. The frightening part is how willingly people believe them. The Stoics would have recognized this immediately. Anything capable of controlling your attention eventually controls your life. Because where attention goes, character follows. Protecting your attention is no longer just a productivity skill. It is an act of psychological self-defense. Every minute spent consuming someone else's life is a minute not constructing your own. Ask yourself honestly, who profits from your distraction? Certainly not you. Every moment your mind wanders without intention, someone else decides what occupies it. That is why clear thinkers guard their attention with ruthless discipline. They understand a truth most people discover too late. Your attention is your life. Whatever repeatedly captures it eventually shapes you. Now I want you to pause. Not the video. You're thinking. Notice how rarely you experience genuine silence. Not external silence. Internal silence. Most people are terrified of it. The moment everything becomes quiet, they reach for their phones. Music, television, conversations. anything to avoid sitting alone with themselves. Why? Because silence exposes everything noise has been hiding. It reveals unresolved pain, ignored fears, unfinished grief, hidden insecurity. Ancient Stoics intentionally sought moments of solitude because they understood something extraordinary. You cannot master a mind you refuse to meet. The person who cannot sit alone with his thoughts has already admitted those thoughts control him. Loneliness and solitude are not the same. Loneliness is needing others to escape yourself. Solitude is becoming so comfortable with your own mind that your peace no longer depends on external company. That transformation changes everything. When your happiness no longer depends on another person's presence, manipulation loses its power. When rejection no longer destroys your identity, freedom begins. When silence becomes peaceful instead of frightening, your thinking becomes sharp enough to cut through illusion. Seneca often withdrew from noise, not because he hated people, but because he valued clarity. He understood that the loudest environment is rarely outside. It is inside an undisciplined mind. Now here's another realization that may disturb you. Every excuse you've repeated has become part of your identity. I don't have enough time. I'm unlucky. I wasn't born with talent. My situation is different. Repeat those long enough, and your brain stops hearing them as excuses. It accepts them as facts. This is how invisible prisons are built. Not with iron bars, with repeated sentences. The moment you challenge those sentences, your entire identity begins to shake. That feeling is uncomfortable. Good. Growth always begins where certainty ends. But there is one habit, one deeply hidden habit, that quietly destroys clear thinking more than fear, distraction, comparison, or criticism combined. Almost everyone practices it. Almost nobody notices it. And until you expose it, your mind will continue sabotaging you while convincing you it's protecting you. Once you recognize this final enemy, you'll never look at your own thoughts the same way again. For years, you believed the battle was happening somewhere outside of you. You believed your greatest obstacle was difficult people, bad luck, limited opportunities, a lack of motivation, a lack of time. But now you know the truth. The greatest battle has always been between the version of you that reacts and the version of you that chooses. Every moment of your life, those two people are fighting for control. One is driven by impulse, fear, anger, ego, and the desperate need to be accepted. The other is guided by reason, discipline, courage, and inner freedom. The question is no longer whether that battle exists. The question is, who will win tomorrow morning when you wake up? Because knowledge changes nothing. Recognition changes nothing. Even inspiration changes nothing. Only repeated action transforms a human being. Marcus Aurelius did not become wise because he admired wisdom. He became wise because he practiced it every day. Seneca did not master his emotions because life was easy. He mastered them because he refused to let comfort become his teacher. Epictetus did not become unshakable because he controlled the world. He became unshakable because he learned to control himself. That same opportunity exists for you. Not someday. Not when life becomes easier. Right now. The next time someone insults you, pause. The next time fear tells you to quit, pause. The next time your mind creates a story without evidence, pause. That pause is where your freedom begins. Remember this. Every emotion asks for permission before it becomes your action. You are the one who grants that permission. No one can make you angry without your judgment. No one can destroy your peace without your cooperation. No one can imprison your mind unless you hand them the key. That is the responsibility Stoicism places on your shoulders. It is demanding. It is uncomfortable. But it is also one of the most liberating truths you will ever encounter. Because once you stop blaming the world, you finally discover the power to change yourself. The world may remain unpredictable. People may still betray you. Plans may still fail. You may still experience pain, disappointment, rejection, and loss. Stoicism never promised a painless life. Promised something far greater. A mind that remains steady when life refuses to be. There is a reason mountains don't argue with storms. They simply endure them. Become like that mountain. Let criticism strike your character instead of your ego. Let failure educate you instead of defining you. Let success humble you instead of corrupting you. Let silence become your strength instead of your loneliness. And above all, let your thoughts become servants of your purpose instead of masters of your life. Never forget this truth. Every day you fail to discipline your mind, someone else will gladly do it for you. Advertisers will shape your desires. Algorithms will shape your attention. Manipulators will shape your emotions. The crowd will shape your beliefs. Until one day you wake up living a life you never consciously chose. Don't let that happen. Protect your attention. Protect your principles. Protect your peace. Because those three things are more valuable than money, status, or applause. Money can be lost. Reputation can change overnight. Power can disappear. But a disciplined mind remains valuable under every circumstance. That is why true wealth begins within. Years from now, people won't remember every opinion they had about you. They won't remember every mistake you made. They won't remember every failure that kept you awake at night. But you will remember the day you finally stopped running from yourself. The day you stopped reacting and started responding. The day you chose discipline over comfort, truth over illusion, freedom over approval. That day will become the foundation of every great decision that follows. And if that day is today, then this video wasn't just something you watched. It was a turning point. Now I want to hear from you. Not because an algorithm demands it, but because declaring your intention gives it strength. Write these words in the comments. My mind belongs to me. Make that more than a comment. Make it a promise. A promise that your emotions will no longer dictate your future. A promise that fear will no longer negotiate your decisions. A promise that your peace will no longer depend on other people's opinions. When enough people make that promise, this becomes more than a channel. It becomes a community of individuals choosing discipline over distraction, clarity over confusion, and freedom over emotional slavery. If this message challenged the way you think, take a moment to leave a like and share it with someone who needs to hear these truths. You never know when one conversation, one video, or one idea can become the turning point in another person's life. And if you're committed to mastering your mind, not just for today, but for life, subscribe and join us. Every video on this channel is designed to sharpen your thinking, strengthen your discipline, and help you build the unshakable inner freedom the Stoics believed was life's greatest achievement. But don't stop here. The next video on your screen is the natural next step in this journey. If today's lesson showed you how to master clear thinking, the next one will reveal another hidden psychological pattern that silently controls most people without them realizing it, and, more importantly, how to break free from it. Don't let this be another video you watch and forget. Turn understanding into action. Click the next video now, and continue building the mind that cannot be manipulated, intimidated, or broken. I'll see you there.